I set up my tent just as the sun dropped below the horizon. The campsite was empty except for me and the tall trees around me. I made a fire and sat down to relax. It felt peaceful at first, just me and the woods. But then the quiet got heavy. I heard rustling in the bushes nearby. I thought it was just an animal and brushed it off. Still, a chill ran down my spine. It felt like someone was watching me. I couldn't shake that feeling. The next day, I hiked further into the trail. The fall colors were beautiful, but I kept spotting strange symbols carved into the trees. They looked old, like they belonged to a different time. I couldn't figure out what they meant, but they made my skin crawl. I thought maybe I was imagining things. That unease hung around me like fog. Later that evening, I heard voices in the distance. It was quiet again, except for that sound. I couldn't make out the words, and it didn't sound like any language I recognized. My heart raced. I stood still, listening. The voices faded, and, for some reason, I felt the urge to see if anyone else was out there. But the dark kept me rooted. As the days went on, I saw glimpses of figures moving in the distance. They seemed to be watching me, too. I would turn my head, and they'd vanish. I thought I was losing it. Maybe I was overtired. The isolation played tricks on my mind. I've always liked to think I'm rational, but something felt different. One night, I decided to explore around my camp. I wanted to confront whatever was out there. My heart pounded in my chest. The darkness felt thick, like it was alive. I moved cautiously through the underbrush and stumbled upon more symbols. Then I saw him. He stood just beyond the trees, staring at me. I felt frozen. I asked if he was okay. There was no response. He stepped closer, and I saw he was wearing old, tattered clothes. They looked like something from another time. Before I could say anything else, he turned away and disappeared into the trees. I blinked and felt a rush of confusion. Was I alone again? Everything felt wrong. The forest wasn't just quiet. It was watching me. I started packing my gear to leave the next morning, but I kept asking myself what just happened. Was it real? Maybe are things out there we can't explain. As I finished up, I turned around one last time. The rustling from the shadows again. I felt a knot in my stomach. This wasn't just in my head. The woods were staring back at me. I didn't know what I would find if I stayed. I woke up early, my heart still racing from the night's events. The dim light filtering through the trees felt ominous instead of welcoming. I hurriedly packed my things, eager to put distance between me and whatever I had seen. As I rolled up my sleeping bag, I glanced around. Nothing seemed out of place, but I felt those eyes again, scrutinizing me from the shadows. I hit the trail with purpose, my legs moving faster than they probably should have. The forest seemed alive, but not in a comforting way. Birds flitted about, yet their songs felt distant and muted. The rustling of leaves felt louder, almost like whispers echoing through the woods. I couldn't shake the tension in my shoulders. The more I walked, the more I felt like I was being drawn deeper into something I didn't understand. After a few hours, I stumbled across a clearing. It was beautiful, golden leaves carpeting the ground, light spilling in like a warm hug. But right in the middle was a large boulder covered in those same strange symbols I had seen earlier. They looked almost like a language, and my curiosity outweighed my fear for a moment. I approached the stone, brushing my fingers over the carvings. The rough textures felt both ancient and foreign. That's when I noticed something else. Beside the boulder was a small pile of rocks arranged in a circle. It looked intentional, like it was left for a reason. The hair on my arm stood on end as I inspected it. This didn't feel like a natural occurrence. My heart started to race again. I had to get out of here, but I was too intrigued to leave without knowing more. Suddenly, there was that rustle again, but this time it was closer. I spun around, my breath catching. That shadowy figure materialized from behind a nearby tree. It looked different, taller, more defined, yet still just a silhouette. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I felt frozen in place, like the forest had roots wrapped around me. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking. This time, I needed an answer. The figure paused. I couldn't see its face, but I felt it was studying me. Then, without a word, it turned and began walking away, disappearing into the underbrush. I stumbled back as panic surged through me. That was it. After everything, all I was left with was silence. Filled with dread, I followed some instinct to chase after it. I didn't even know why, but something deep inside urged me on. I pushed through the branches, moving quickly, but as I rounded a bend, I tripped and fell hard. When I looked back up, the figure had vanished once again. I was met with only shadows. My heart sank. I was utterly alone. Then, everything went dark. A thick fog rolled in almost instantly, swallowing up the sun-drenched clearing. I stumbled to my feet, but I could barely see. Fear clawed at my throat. I had to get back to the trailhead. In a panic, I turned and started running, even though I couldn't see where I was going. But then I heard something, a low chant, echoing through the mist. It was the same rhythm I had heard before. My gut twisted. I wasn't just running away. I was running towards something I didn't understand. Game on. I raced through the thick fog, my breath coming in quick gasps. The chanting grew louder, bouncing off the trees in a way that felt like a warning. I pushed myself harder, forcing my legs to move. I had lost all sense of direction, but somehow I felt the presence of something behind me, just out of sight. Then the ground shifted beneath my feet. I stumbled, my ankle twisting on an unseen root. I cried out in pain, trying to keep myself from falling again. My heart raced as I struggled to regain my footing, a deep sense of dread creeping over me. Would the mist swallow me whole? Using a nearby tree for support, I yanked myself up and kept moving. But the chant resonated all around me now. It was different, more intense, as if it were building towards something. I felt like I was intruding on a ritual, an unseen gathering hidden by the fog. Shaking off the fear that threatened to paralyze me, I pressed onward, yearning to find the source. Suddenly, I noticed a flicker of light cutting through the gray haze. My heartbeat quickened at the thought of other people nearby. I needed to get to them. I made my way toward the glow, but as I drew closer, it flickered out, almost as if it had sensed my approach. I stepped into a small clearing, the chanting retreating a bit as I emerged from the trees. The light was gone, but was there something else? I narrowed my eyes, scanning the area. The boulder I had seen earlier was now visible again, looming ominously. The symbols remained unchanged, yet tonight they felt more alive, pulsating with energy. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice barely breaking through the heaviness of the fog. The only response was silence, and my pulse pounded in my ears. My instincts told me to leave, that this was not a place for me. But something caught my eye. There was movement, a shadow creeping around the boulder. Taking a deep breath, I stepped closer, my heart hammering. I didn't want to believe I was imagining things, but as I moved cautiously, that familiar figure came into focus again, lingering at the edge of the clearing. I recognized the outline. Was it the same being from before? There was no mistaking it. I called out once more, but this time I felt a sense of determination wash over me. "Why are you doing this?" It was risky, but I needed answers. The figure paused, then slowly approached. The chant transformed. It was now a song, a melody that wrapped around me like a shroud. I felt it resonating within me, awakening some long-buried instinct. And then, just as quickly, it stopped. The figure raised a hand, pointing towards something beyond the fog. My heart stumbled as I turned to follow the gesture. That's when I saw it. A faint outline in the distance, shimmering against the backdrop of the fading mist. It was no longer just a whisper. It was an invitation. But was it a path to understanding, or a step closer to danger? I hesitated, caught between the familiar pull of fear and the nagging ache of curiosity. The figure waited, and I knew I couldn't turn back now. I took a shaky step towards the unknown. I moved forward, the damp earth squelching under my feet. The outline became clearer, revealing a structure I had never seen before. It was small, almost like a hut, with walls made of intertwined branches and a roof that seemed to blend into the trees above. Curiosity and dread fought within me, urging me either to explore or to flee. As I approached, the air grew still. The fog thickened around me, swallowing the path behind. I felt like I was crossing an invisible boundary. The song from before whispered in my ears, a soft melody that seemed to beckon me closer. I stepped gingerly onto the warped wooden steps leading up to the hut. They creaked under my weight, a sound that echoed through the quiet. Then I paused, pressing my ear against the door, half expecting to hear someone inside. Nothing. Absolute silence. The figure remained behind me, watchful. I risked a glance back, but it blurred into the mist, disappearing like a memory. I turned back to the door and hesitated once more. Should I go inside, or would I find something worse waiting for me within? With a deep breath, I pushed the door open, the hinges squealing in protest. Inside was dimly lit, the faint glow of candles flickering on a small table in the center. My eyes scanned the room, and that's when I saw it. A circle drawn on the floor, etched in some dark substance. It pulsed faintly, reminiscent of the symbols on the boulder outside. I felt a chill creep up my spine. This was no ordinary place. My senses were on high alert, but I stepped further into the hut, drawn by the strange energy that hummed in the air. I felt my heart racing, each beat echoing in my ears as I knelt beside the circle. It looked almost like a gateway, a portal leading to something unseen. Suddenly, a crash outside jolted me. I spun around, my instincts screaming that I wasn't alone. The door slammed shut, and I could hear rustling in the shadows outside. Panic coursed through me as I steadied myself. I was not ready to face whatever, or whoever, was lurking in the dark. Then I saw it again. The figure stood outside, illuminated briefly by a flicker of light. It seemed to stare into the hut, gauging me as if weighing my worthiness. The chanting resumed, rising in volume. It wrapped around me, pulling at the very edges of my soul. I needed to decide. I could stay and unlock the mystery of this place, or I could run back into the fog, away from the unknown. But as I considered my options, the nature of the figure changed. It morphed, shifting into something darker, more sinister. Just then, the door started to rattle. Time felt frozen. Everything within me cried to escape, but the circle drew me in, tempting me with secrets I couldn't ignore. I backed away from the door, clenching my fists in defiance. Whatever was coming for me, I wouldn't go down without a fight. But what might that fight look like? A sudden realization hit me. What if this wasn't just a place of danger? What if it was a chance to confront the fears I had been running from all along? And then the door burst open as a chilling wind poured through, carrying with it the soft echoes of 1,000 whispers. The wind rushed in, swirling around me like an angry spirit. It was cold and biting, filled with whispers that mingled together in a chaotic symphony. My first instinct was to run, to escape this nightmare. But my feet felt glued to the ground, anchored by an unseen force. Something surged through the room, flickering shadows dancing across the walls. The candles trembled, casting strange shapes that twisted and turned. Then, from the depths of the swirling fog, a figure emerged. It came slowly, as if drawn by the pulsing circle on the floor. My breath caught in my throat. It was not the figure outside, but a woman, her features indistinct, yet undeniably compelling.
Long hair hung down her back, and she wore a flowing garment that appeared to be woven from the mist itself. Her eyes glinted like polished stones, and they seemed to hold a fearsome weight. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. I strained to hear, my heart pounding as adrenaline surged through me. "You must choose." Suddenly I understood. The circle was more than a mere drawing. It was a call. I rubbed my fingers over the rough edges, feeling the coolness radiated from it. Instinctively, I knew I was being asked to make a decision. But what would happen if I stepped inside the circle? Would I be lost forever, like those whispers? Or would I somehow break free? Before I could formulate a plan, shadows shifted, rising from the floor like dark smoke. They curled around the woman, dragging her back toward the doorway. I could see panic in her eyes now, desperation in her movements. "You cannot let them take me," she cried out. And in that moment, I felt a flicker of courage. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling but loud enough to cut through the noise. "What do you want from me?" "Truth," she replied, and for a heartbeat, the chaos stilled. "You have to face what lies within. Only then can we all be free." The shadows lunged again, black tendrils reaching for her as she fought to hold her ground. I was paralyzed, torn between helping her and my instinct to protect myself. Did I have the strength to confront whatever lay within? As I stepped closer to the circle, the energy surged around me, pulling me in. I felt as if I were slingshotting forward, the world blurring. Suddenly, I was no longer in the hut. The fog shifted again, and I found myself in a different place. A vast expanse opened before me. It wasn't the woods anymore. I stood in what seemed like an endless void, darkness stretching out infinitely on all sides. In this strange realm, I could see echoes of memories, my fears and secrets floating just beyond my reach. I saw my past failures, my regrets, and the faces of people I had let down. "Face them," the woman's voice echoed in the distance, a lifeline in the darkness. But before I could respond, the shadows surged forward again, more aggressive this time. They surrounded me, and I felt the pressure of their weight. Panic clawed at my insides. I had come too far to back down now, yet dread gripped me tightly. I had to make a choice. Then something in the distance began to glow, a light that pierced through the shadows. I didn't know what it was, but I felt it beckoning me, promising clarity. With newfound resolve, I reached out towards it. The moment my fingers grazed the glowing light, the shadows recoiled, hissing like terrified creatures. They were no longer the dense mass they had been before. Now they seemed smaller, weaker. The warmth from the light enveloped me like a comforting embrace, pushing back the darkness. As I took a step closer, the world around me shimmered and warped. Every echo, every fleeting memory solidified in a way that made them feel just a breath away. Faces became clear. My mother, eyes filled with disappointment. My best friend, a mix of anger and hurt etched across his features. Strangers from my past, with expressions of confusion. Their emotions swirled around me, almost tangible, brushing against my skin. "What is happening?" I shouted to the void, my voice quaking with uncertainty. I still couldn't see the woman, but her voice rang out, echoing through the haze. "You must understand. They come from you. Release them." I took a deep breath, frustration mixing with fear. How? How do I let them go? My heart raced as I looked around, desperate for answers. But the faces only stared back, their silent reproaches weighing heavily in the air. Then, in a burst of courage, I turned toward the light again. It pulsed with energy, and I felt drawn to it. I didn't need to confront every face all at once. Instead, I needed to focus on one thing, the source of my regret. There was one particular memory that burned brighter. The day I chose ambition over friendship, and in doing so, shattered a bond I thought was unbreakable. I reached out, willing myself to step into the warmth of the light. "I'm sorry," I cried. "I can't change what I did, but I can learn from it. I know I need to be better." As those words left my lips, the light brightened, illuminating the darkness around me. The faces shimmered, momentarily fading but not disappearing. The woman's voice resonated once more. "Let them know they are seen. Acknowledge your pain. Only then will you find peace." The shadows stirred uneasily, as if sensing the shift in energy. They lashed out, but I stood my ground. "I see you," I shouted. "I acknowledge what I've done." The darkness around me seemed to ripple, and I saw the twisting forms starting to recede. The faces in my mind began to show relief. Some smiled softly, others nodded, but all of them started to fade, leaving a lightness in their wake. Still tethered to the circle, I felt a release, a crumbling of the burdens I had carried for too long. But then, just as hope sparked within me, a new shadow surfaced from the depths, larger and darker than the ones before. It loomed menacingly behind me, hot breath brushing against my neck. Then everything went cold. My heart stopped as I spun around to confront the looming figure, just as the light began to flicker. My resolve was tested anew, a spine-chilling dread crawling back into my chest. "Face this," the woman's voice rang out, steady but distant. But I hesitated, fear gripping my throat. I had let go of some burdens, but what awaited me now felt far more dangerous. "Who are you?" I demanded, the darkness rising like an insurmountable wall. The shadow shifted, and with it, my heart raced even faster. I was about to discover something worse than my past regrets, something I had never wanted to confront. I took a step back, my mind racing with 100 thoughts. The air felt thick, heavy with unseen weight as the figure loomed larger. My skin prickled with a cold sweat. Ignoring the taunts and murmurs from the shadows behind me, I forced myself to face the looming shape. "Come closer," it growled, voice like gravel. My instincts screamed to run, but the warmth of the light urged me to stay, to confront this manifestation of my fears. "Show yourself," I shouted, desperation fueling my voice. I wanted to see the truth of what haunted me, to put a name to this thing that made my heart pound like thunder. Slowly, the shadow began to shift. It peeled away layers of darkness as if stripping off its own skin. A figure began to emerge, a reflection distorted by my own malice, guilt, and shame. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the outline. It resembled me. "No," I whispered, denial washing.
"This can't be me. Who else could it be?" the shadow hissed, its voice echoing my deepest fears. "You created this pain. You made these choices." Suddenly, fragments of the past swirled before my eyes, moments I had tried to bury. The times I chose ambition over honesty, when I abandoned friends for my own gain. "You put yourself first," it continued, "and now you have to face the consequences." I felt the panic take hold, the urgency of the situation growing more intense. The more the shadow spoke, the more weight fell on my shoulders. I had buried those moments, but now they clawed their way back, demanding acknowledgement. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," I cried, my voice cracking. "I was wrong. I was just trying to succeed. I thought that's what I was supposed to do." The shadow laughed, bitter and cold. "And yet, here you are, alone in your regret." It leaned closer, obscuring the light I had just embraced. "It doesn't matter what you thought. It matters what you did." The coldness seeped deeper into my bones, and I felt resistance drain from me. Every step I had taken toward ambition was now a suffocating chain binding me to this entity. I felt powerless. Suddenly, a surge of clarity struck me. "But I can change. I can be better," I shouted, surprising myself. "I can repair what's broken."
Yes, it hissed, the flicker of hope lighting my resolve. But are you ready to suffer the consequence of those changes? I hesitated, my heart pounding. The weight of my past loomed terrifyingly large, but deep down, I knew that facing it was the only way out. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. The shadow paused, as if considering my statement. Then it surged forward, merging into my being. For a moment, I felt the crushing guilt and pain, but alongside it was a flicker of hope. Just then, the light behind me pulsed again. It seemed to reach out, promising warmth and understanding. Acknowledge your truth, the woman's voice urged. With a newfound determination, I shouted, I acknowledge the hurt I've caused. I see my mistakes, and I won't run from them anymore. As I spoke, the shadow writhed. It began to shrink, losing its grip on my soul. I grasped the warmth of the light, feeling it radiate through me. But just as the last remnants of the shadow began to fade, a familiar face appeared in the light, my best friend. Now what are you going to do? He asked, his voice heavy with expectation. I froze, caught between relief and dread. Facing my past was only the beginning. I was left wondering, had I truly changed, or was this the start of something even more complicated? The next morning, I woke up feeling different. My chest was lighter, but there was still an unease in my gut. I stared at the cracks in the ceiling, replaying last night's confrontation with the shadow. I had faced part of myself, but the road ahead felt daunting. After a quick breakfast, I grabbed my backpack and decided to go for a hike on the Appalachian Trail. Nature always had a way of calming my mind, and I hoped it would help me process everything. As I set out, the cool air filled my lungs, and I felt a hymn of freedom among the trees. The path was quiet, save for the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. I concentrated on the rhythm of my steps, trying to shake off the weight of last night. But every rustle in the bushes made me jump. It was as if the woods carried whispers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. About an hour into the hike, I spotted a group of hikers ahead. They looked like a mix of families and solo travelers gathered around a fallen tree. My heart raced with the thought of interaction. What would I say? Did they have any idea of the storm still brewing inside me? I approached cautiously, keeping my distance but listening in on their conversation. They were sharing strange stories about the trail, missing hikers, mysterious lights, and an old legend about a spirit watching over the woods. I shook my head, brushing off the stories as mere myths. Then something caught my eye, a flicker of movement through the trees. It was quick, almost like a shadow darting between the trunks. My breath hitched, and I barely caught myself before I instinctively turned to follow it. What was that? The group continued their tales as I stepped away from them, inching toward where I'd seen the movement. That's when I saw it. A figure, blurry in the distance, just out of reach. All I could make out were the outlines of a person, seemingly lost among the greenery. My heart pounded. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure paused, and for a fleeting moment, my breath left me. It had a familiar shape, but my mind couldn't place it. I took a step closer, my curiosity pulling me in. "Who are you?" I asked. But instead of answering, the figure turned abruptly and vanished behind the trees. Panic surged within me, blending with hope. Was it real? Had I finally lost my mind in these woods? I dashed back toward the group, my mind racing. "Did anyone else see that?" I asked breathlessly. They looked at me with puzzled expressions, and I felt vulnerable under the weight of their stares. "What are you talking about?" one of them replied, eyebrows raised. A chill crept down my spine. No one else had seen what I saw. I stood there, feeling a mix of dread and confusion. Had I conjured that figure from my own guilt, a manifestation of the past I was trying to flee? Before I could ponder further, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed behind me. My stomach dropped. I turned just in time to see a man rushing toward me, wild-eyed and out of breath. "You need to leave. It's not safe," he shouted, urgency in his voice. Suddenly, the air thickened, filled with tension. I had sought answers, but found something far more ominous. I was ready to face my past, but what awaited me now felt colder and darker than I could imagine. The lingering question hung heavy. What had I stumbled into on this trail? I froze, the man's warning echoing in my mind. My instincts kicked in. "What do you mean it's not safe?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. My heart raced, not just from fear, but from the adrenaline coursing through me. He glanced back toward the trees, his expression a mix of fear and urgency. "They're coming for you. You need to get out of here, now." "Who?" I demanded, confusion washing over me. The group of hikers was starting to notice us. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, questioning. I felt exposed, like my secrets were being laid bare. He steadied himself, panting. "The things in the woods, they're restless. They don't like it when people linger too long." His voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking any louder would summon whatever he feared. "You have to understand, this isn't just a hike, it's a warning." I shook my head, trying to dismiss the terror creeping into my mind. "What do you know about it?" I asked, desperate for clarity. "There's a reason people disappear out here," he said, taking a step closer, eyes locked on mine. "Those stories, they're not just stories, they're real." I opened my mouth to reply, but all that came out was a shaky breath. The shadow I'd seen flashed through my mind. This place felt charged with something, but I had attributed it to my guilt and confusion. Now it seemed much deeper, much more sinister. The group of hikers was moving closer, their curiosity piqued. They wanted to hear what was happening. I could feel their eyes darting between me and the stranger. "What are you talking about?" one of the families behind me asked, a woman clutching her child tightly. Before I could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the trees. It felt unnatural, like the forest itself was exhaling, and I instinctively stepped back. The man's expression hardened. "We don't have time. You must trust me." Just then, an eerie howl echoed through the woods, unlike anything I had ever heard. The hikers froze, and I felt the weight of the moment settle over us. "We need to go," I shouted, panic surging in my chest. I turned to the man, ready to retreat with him, but he hesitated. "You can't run from this. You need to see it for yourself," he said, gripping my arm urgently. "You're linked to it." "What do you mean?" My voice shook, and I tried to pull away. But the air felt thick, electric, as if the very ground was warning me to stay. "Look for the shadow. Follow it," he muttered. Then he glanced back towards the trees, and I could see something shift within them. A darkness seemed to stir, coiling around the trunks like smoke. Terror and curiosity battled within me. I wanted to flee, but I felt this pull, a strange connection to whatever lay deeper in the woods. "We can't just stand here," I yelled, my heart racing as I gripped my backpack tighter. But before I could rally everyone, the ground trembled slightly beneath us. The whispers of the woods grew louder, and I could see the shadows dancing among the trees. The man stepped back, eyes wide with alarm. "It's here." And just like that, everything went dark. The world faded around me, swallowed by an all-consuming blackness. I thought I might scream, but the sound was lost in the void. Just as panic surged, the shadows that had encircled us suddenly dissipated, and I felt a gentle tug, pulling me back toward the light. I blinked and found myself standing alone in that mysterious clearing with the ancient boulder. The symbols glowed faintly under the twilight sky, casting an otherworldly ambiance. It felt eerily calm, an unsettling silence surrounding me as I stood unsure of what to do next. Where did everyone go? "Hello?" I called into the emptiness, but no one answered. My heart raced as I recalled the terror from moments earlier, the howling noise, the shadows, the desperate warnings. Did they all escape, or had I been left behind? The thought sent a chill crawling up my spine. Without another moment's hesitation, I sprinted back toward the trail I had come from. But the dark forest around me felt different now. The trees seemed to shift, branches curling inward like a hand trying to snatch me back. I pressed on, sweat trickling down my back as I battled the branches scratching at my arms. About 10 minutes into my race against the shadows, a familiar whisper echoed around me. Face the shadow. It was the woman from before, her voice ethereal and disembodied. I couldn't see her, but I felt her presence urging me to confront whatever darkness clung to these trees. Despite the thought sending ice through my veins, a part of me understood I could no longer run. "Fine," I shouted defiantly into the wind, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. "I will face the shadow." I had a choice to make, one that could end this nightmare or descend into something worse. With newfound resolve, I found a large tree trunk to press against, scanning the shadows ahead. I felt a sudden chill, goosebumps rising on my skin. The chanting drifted back into the air, resonating with my pulse as it entwined with the rustling of leaves. Even though I was terrified, I sensed that something was building, something waiting for me in the depths of this forest. Then, in the flickering twilight, I saw it, a movement on the edge of the trees, the silhouette of the figure I'd seen before. My breath hitched as it stepped forward, revealing its familiar shape. The figure was me, but another me, an embodiment of the darkness that twisted within. "What are you?" I asked, and the figure grinned, a sneer that dripped with malice. "I am the guilt, the pain, the regret," it replied. "All that you rejected, locked away in your heart. I am your truth." My stomach tightened. "I didn't reject you, Lies, all lies," it howled, lunging forward. I staggered back, but the force of its anger pulled at me, threatening to consume my very essence. "You can't outrun me. You need to acknowledge me." In that moment, the weight of everything I had hidden struck me like an avalanche. I watched as memories surged and collided with my mind. The people I had hurt, the chances I had taken without consideration for others. The shadow's laughter echoed in my ears, reminding me of my failures, my need to succeed above all else. "You're right," I shouted, grasping my emotions tightly. "I own all of it. I let ambition blind me." The figure stilled momentarily, surprise flickering across its shadowed face. "Is that so?" Suddenly, the symbols carved into the boulder glowed brighter, resonating with my words. I could feel them embedding truth into my soul. In that moment of clarity, the darkness began to swirl around me, rising higher and higher until I was encased in its shadowy grasp. "Face it then," I screamed, determination surging within me. "Face the parts of me I've tried to forget." When the shadow lunged at me again, I stood my ground. "You will not take me," I roared, and as I did, the light from the symbols burst forth, enveloping us both. For an instant, the darkness faltered, shrinking until only wisps remained, mere tendrils writhing in discomfort. I could feel a weight lifting, releasing my grip on my past. But as I basked in the light, one question flashed through my mind. Was this truly an escape, or simply a temporary reprieve from my own demons? And as if on cue, the woman's voice echoed back to me. "Every choice has its price. Healing takes time." In that moment of reckoning, I felt the world shift. I braced myself as everything around me began to flicker like a dying candle, light mingling with shadow until it merged into a tapestry of uncertainty. The darkness receded, leaving behind a trail of shimmering hope, yet the questions remained. Could I truly reconcile with my past? And what other shadows lurked in the corners of my mind? Before I could reflect further, the forest erupted into its familiar sounds, the rustling leaves, the distant song of birds, and the whispers of a life that had once seemed so far out of reach. But I felt different, light and shadow now intertwined
within me, reminding me of the complexities in facing oneself. I took a step forward, where I sensed the warmth of life pulsing through the woods. At that moment, I knew I would keep walking. I would confront those unanswered questions, ride the waves of uncertainty. But for now, I was free to seek my own path among the trees, carrying both my light and the shadows I had chosen not to ignore. As I moved deeper into the woods, I knew the journey was far from over. What awaited me at the end of the trail, however, remained a mystery, a story yet to unfold.